I have a collection of eyeshadow palettes that are going to be a part of a new summer eyeshadow tag. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome to today's video. If you guys are new here, my name is Stacy. I feature unfiltered makeup opinions and honest reviews, old-fashioned beauty tutorials, and I also have the unfiltered content. Go check that out if you haven't already after you watch this video. Today we're doing the Sun-Kissed Summer Eyeshadow Palette Tag. I'm so excited for this video. This video is actually in collaboration with Kelly from KBellaBeauty here on YouTube. I was talking with Kelly about doing a collaboration and I was like, I want to do a unique summer eyeshadow palette tag, and we are naming this the Sun-Kissed Summer Eyeshadow Palette Tag. If you guys are here from Kelly's video, hi and welcome to my channel. I hope you guys consider subscribing. Now, I got to meet Kelly actually at the Creators and Friends event in December of 2023. That was at their holiday party. And since then, Kelly and I have kept in touch over on Instagram. So I will leave all of Kelly's information in the description box down below. Definitely go check out her channel, see her answers to this tag. I'm so excited to show you guys what I have for this tag, the Sun-Kissed Summer Eyeshadow Palette Tag. So we have 9 questions. These questions are specifically geared toward like eyeshadow palettes, but also ones that are more summer. And we came up with a list of 9 unique questions that we feel have not really been seen before. And we are calling it the Sun-Kissed Summer Eyeshadow Palette Tag. So if you guys want to actually do this tag on your channel, definitely tag Kelly and I, and also check the description box for all of the questions that we came up with. Question number 1, a palette that works well for summer, even though it is completely opposite with its design theme. So when we came up with this question, the thought behind it was like, there are a lot of eyeshadow palettes out there that get released, and some of them are like themed for like Halloween or Christmas, but they could actually be used for different times of the year, even though their like overall theming is like maybe Halloween, maybe Christmas, but it could actually be used for summer. So the first one that really came to mind with this question was the Little Ghost palette. It's the collaboration with Angelica Nyqvist and Oldie's Eye. This eyeshadow palette came out in October of 2023. It's a completely like Halloween themed eyeshadow palette with like its names and also with the packaging, but like the actual color story inside for this eyeshadow palette is very like summer leaning, very like bright, poppy, beautiful colors that work really, really well with summer. So even though it's like Halloween themed, this was the eyeshadow palette that came to mind when I was thinking of the unconventional palette that like is themed differently but would work for summer. There's definitely a lot of like wiggle room where you can play with this eyeshadow palette. You have a lot of purples in here. You also have a really nice row of pink, and you also have these really beautiful oranges and pinks and like deeper reds. And you could create like, I'm thinking like sultry sunsets. You could create a really nice like purple ombre eye and like really make your eyes pop. You could use some of the oranges and the reds along with this really cool like chartreuse yellow. Put that on the inner corner and you get some really beautiful summer eyeshadow looks with this palette. I've actually featured this in quite a few different videos. I feel like this works well with summer because it's so bright and poppy, even though it's like technically it's Halloween, but this definitely works really, really well with summer. So it's a 16 shade eyeshadow palette. I do believe it is still available on the Oldie's Eye website. If it is, I'm going to link all the information in the description box down below, so definitely go check it out. But Halloween Little Ghost palette is what came to mind when I was thinking of an eyeshadow palette where the color story fits, but the theming of the palette is like completely unconventional for summer. Question number 2, a summer palette that will never go out of style. So an oldie but a goodie. And honestly, like I wanted to go back to like really, really super oldie but a goodie. And honestly, this was the first like high-end eyeshadow palette, one of the first. This was one of the first like high-end eyeshadow palettes that I had ever purchased from, but it is an oldie but a goodie, and this was actually popular back in like 2015, 2016, 2017 in there, and that is the Anastasia Original Norvina palette. This is an oldie but a goodie. Honestly, when I look at this eyeshadow palette, it screams to me more summer leaning because it has a lot of like nice warm neutral shades in here, but then the foils in here are also pinks and purples, which pinks honestly remind me of like Valentine's Day, spring, but then also bringing it on into the summer months, and that's what this palette really encompasses for me. The ABH Norvina palette, I don't even know. This is an oldie but a goodie. I don't even know if this is actually sold anymore. If it's sold, I'm gonna link it down below. This palette offers so many beautiful pigmented blendable matte shades, and they are warm toned, warm leaning. So when we are in these summer months and we're doing more like warm toned eyeshadow looks, this palette offers that. And you also have like a hint of pink, you have a hint of purple in here, and then you also just have those shades that really can just bring to life a really warm, neutral eyeshadow look. And I absolutely love this. One of my favorite shades is actually rose gold, so it is like a true rose gold shade, and it's one of those shades where you can just like put some brown in the crease and then pop that all over the lid and you are good to go. But this honestly has always been like my #1 summer eyeshadow palette, oldie but goodie, that I reach for every year because of the warm tones, because of the colors that are in here. They're a little bit more muted, but they are perfect for summer. I love the Anastasia Norvina palette. I definitely would say it's a oldie but a goodie for summer. #3, a travel-friendly eyeshadow palette. I was actually flashing back to when my family and I were doing a lot of travel in 2023. We did a lot of travel in 2023. We went camping. We went to Vermont a couple of times. We went up to the Thousand Islands. Like, we were doing a lot of traveling in 2023. And honestly, this eyeshadow palette is so spot on for even us, just a summer travel eyeshadow palette, because of the color story that it offers. And I'm talking about the Natasha Denona Alloy palette. I actually talked about this in a recent video where I was looking at the new Natasha Denona Golden palette, and this is like literally a very curated version of the Golden palette, but honestly, it's also super travel friendly. It is 5 shades, it has 3 mattes, and it has 2 foils in here. The 2 foils that it offers is more of like a teakish brown bronzy shade, and then you also have like this copper, almost true to gold shade, but it also offers those really nice warm toned mattes in here. So if you want to do just a bronzy, warm toned, warmed leaning eyeshadow look, you can do that. If you just want to do a simple like put this all over the lid, make an eyeliner with this deep dark brown shade, then you can do that as well. Honestly, it's super travel friendly. The mattes in here are so pigmented and so blendable. This was actually a BoxyCharm exclusive, so you actually can't purchase this on the Natasha Denona website, but you can find it on Poshmark and like other retailers as well, so I will link it where I have found it for you. But this is definitely my go-to travel-friendly eyeshadow palette that I always pull out, especially during the summer, because that's usually when we're traveling. But I love that it's neutral, and then it also is able to glam up, glam down, everyday looks, and it's just like the perfect travel palette, and it's spot on to be like, this is literally just a mini curation of the Natasha Denona Golden palette. 5 shades. It's like, it's so tiny. Just for like size reference, this is the Norvina palette and this is the Alloy palette, and literally look at the size difference between the two. So travel friendly, so easy to use, and I love it. There's so many looks that you can come up with this eyeshadow palette itself, and it's honestly like one of the best travel palettes that I have. #4, the most underrated palette that no one talks about, but it is amazing for summer. There were actually a couple of eyeshadow palettes that came to mind when I was thinking of this, and one of them is they're indie makeup palettes, but I had to pick one, and I was like, the most underrated, and I was actually just talking about this brand. I've raved about this brand for a very, very long time, but honestly, the most underrated palette that's good for summer. Honestly, this is a good like holiday palette. This is just a good overall palette, and I have mentioned it a lot on my channel. We're talking about the Geodes palette from What's Up Beauty. This is 14 shades. You get really beautiful blendable mattes in here. You have duochromes. You also have some foils in here, and it's also just a really like fun color story because you do have those mauvier tones, you have some warm tone browns in here, and you also have some cool tone browns in here. You do have a pop of green, which I absolutely love, and it's like a like olivey green. But then you have these gorgeous foily shades. Like you have a really beautiful pop of like yellow, and that shade is called Citrine. And then you also have this shade right here. It's a green one called Peridot. And honestly, this is just such a beautiful curated palette. And honestly, like you could wear this for summer because of the really light foily shades that you have in here, and they really just make your eyes pop. Honestly, like this is such a good eyeshadow palette. I've talked about it for holiday, and now I'm talking about it for summer. I think I talked about it for spring too. This is just an overall like such a beautiful palette, and the formula is stunning. The mattes are so easy to work with, and the foils are just so pigmented, and they just glide on your eyes like butter. This is honestly one of my favorite eyeshadow palettes from one of my favorite brands. It actually is made in Italy, and it is so good. I definitely think that the Geodes palette is like so underrated. I think that What's a Beauty is so underrated in general, and this is like a perfect like this is a perfect summer palette if you're wanting to start into like duochromes, multi-chromes. You want a really pigmented blendable formula in the mattes, and honestly you can come up with so many like diverse looks with this, and it has a great range of color in it, but it's not like intimidating color. It's fun color, fun to play with color. Okay, so if all I could wear was neutrals for the summer, what eyeshadow palette would I choose? And honestly, had to be this one. It had to be this one. This is the Natasha Denona I Need a Nude palette. This was actually released in fall of 2023. This eyeshadow palette is like this is my dream neutral eyeshadow palette because it leans more cool toned. I like cool tone palettes. I like palettes that lean a little bit more cool tone because I actually have cool undertones in my skin. So my skin plays better with cooler undertones in an eyeshadow palette. The thing that I love about this palette is that you can create some very like soft romantic looks, or you can even deepen it up with some of these darker shades, and you can create some very like smoky eyeshadow looks as well. But the reason why, if like I could only choose one nude palette to wear for the entire summer, it's because of the like wet, foily, glittery looking shades in this eyeshadow palette. And I absolutely love playing with those shades in this eyeshadow palette because it just makes my eyes look glittery, wet, like dimensional. And that's what's been on trend for 2024 as far as like makeup goes, is the wet eyeshadow look. But honestly, like I can't stop using this palette. This is my favorite palette. It is so good. It has so many great eyeshadows in this palette, and I'm a cool tone lover, like I said, and it's just one of my favorites to play with for the Natasha Denona I Need a Nude palette. Now, like I know I picked the Alloy palette as like my travel friendly palette, but if I was only allowed to use one nude palette for the entire summer and I had to take it traveling with me, this you can actually remove the shadows in the back here. You can remove the shadows in the back here, and you can actually curate it into a smaller eyeshadow palette. So even if I was left with the option of like, I'm not taking the entire eyeshadow palette with me when I go traveling and I only can use one nude eyeshadow palette for summer, this is still number one for me. It has some really beautiful like pinkish salmon-y tones in here, so you can get a really nice like pink eyeshadow look, and that totally reminds me of summer. It offers a lot of these like cooler neutral shades in here so that I can have like just a very soft matte look if I want to. I could just literally pop this all over the lid, use a liner, and be done with it if you're like all about the mattes. If you just want a one and done shade, Muse is like my favorite shade, and I love just like placing it all over the lid. It's so beautiful that way. So this palette has like a lot of capabilities to it. It offers the wet eyeshadow look, and these are all cool tones, and this would be like the nude eyeshadow palette that I would pick if I could only use one for the entire summer. All right, the best summer companion palette, there was like no contest with this. This is one of my favorite eyeshadow palettes. It was actually one of my first purchases from the brand Cliona, and it was actually an eyeshadow palette, and it was actually in collaboration with Emily Violet Marie, and they actually just did like a restock of it, which was really exciting. And we're talking about the Dragon Fruit palette. Mine is actually the original packaging, and my packaging broke, so we're just gonna hold it like this. The Dragon Fruit palette from Cliona Cosmetics is a curation with Emily Violet Marie, and this was actually one of their first this was one of my first purchases from Cliona. And the reason why I purchased it was because it had multi-chromes, it had duochromes, and it also had a really great foil and satin formula in here. And it was all curated into one eyeshadow palette, which Cliona is known for their stained glass series, which is all single shadows. And this was like the best of both worlds. It was Cliona shadows in an eyeshadow palette, and I just loved the color story for this eyeshadow palette. Now, honestly, it looks intimidating, but it is such a great companion palette. Like if you're to take this, and this is, I've done this quite a bit with this palette, but if you're to take like a nude eyeshadow palette, or even take one like Little Ghost and you add in some of the duochromes that are in this eyeshadow palette and you just pair the two together, you can create some absolutely insanely gorgeous dimensional looks with it. Like if you just need a little bit of a nude and then a little bit of something on the outer corner to deepen it up. This shade right here is called Effervescent, and it's actually one of my favorite duochrome shades. Actually, I think it's a multichrome. It's one of my favorite multichrome shades because it does a really beautiful shift. And I actually had a friend who got married, and this is like a peach to like a goldeny undertone to like a yellow, and it's just so like dimensional on the eye. Like you can't go wrong with this eyeshadow palette because it has that offering. And then you also have Dragantini, which also is another, like, this is a multi-chrome, and this is a, with, it's like a pink with a purple with a yellow, and you can just see this shift in there, but it also has that peach vibe that's going for 2024. And then you also have Infusion, which is like a lilac purple shade, and this is so stunning. It's a cool tone purple. It's very foily, very easy to put on the eyes. You have these really awesome like green foil shades in here as well. You also have Bubbles, which is another like multi-chrome duochrome, and it offers that like wet eyeshadow look on your eyes, and it's just so stunning. I mean, this eyeshadow palette is literally one of the best, like it's a summer companion palette. It looks so good with colors, it looks so good with neutrals, and it would honestly pair well with any of the eyeshadow palettes that I have currently mentioned in this video. It is such a good eyeshadow palette. Like I said, I had a friend who, she got married in May, and I brought this eyeshadow palette and I decided to wear it myself, and I just used a couple of like the multi-chromes in it, and she was getting married as the bride. She was swatching this eyeshadow palette and she's like, oh, like I gotta put some of this on my eyes, and she ended up putting this shade on her eyes right here, and you should have seen like her eyes were just like sparkly and a glow, and she's actually a lot deeper toned than me, and it looked so good on her skin tone. It looks good on pasty pale girls like me. It looks good on somebody who has like a tan undertone or even like a deeper undertone, because the quality and the way that they formulated these, they just pop on multiple skin tones, and it's so pretty. So this is my, this is the companion palette, the summer companion palette, the dragon fruit, and plus like the packaging just kind of looks like summer in and of itself. That didn't influence me at all, like thinking about like fruit and everything like that, but it is a really good companion palette. What is one summer makeup release that you don't think you can pass up? And I actually don't have my hands on it, but I haven't been able to pass it up, and that is the Midnight Moth palette from Electrum Cosmetics. Electrum Cosmetics just released this eyeshadow palette for pre-order a couple of weeks ago, and I will be getting my hands on it, and I'm so excited. I actually couldn't pass up the opportunity to get another Electrum Cosmetics eyeshadow palette. Electrum Cosmetics is known for having hand-pressed, handmade, hand-mixed, custom multi-chrome and duochrome eyeshadows. She also does holochrome eyeshadows, and I have quite a bit of her eyeshadow palettes. Like I have the Sea Witch palette, I have Celestial Witch, I have Heartbreaker, and I also have some of her singles. And just to give you guys an example, this isn't Midnight Moth, but just to give you an example of the quality of her shadows, like her multi-chromes and duochromes are just so pigmented, so easy. Like you could literally just barely touch this, tap it on your eye, and be done. And Midnight Moth has a like foresty feel to it, kind of like a grungy feel to it. I could not pass it up because Electrum Cosmetics has such a beautiful formula, and I cannot wait to get my hands on it. That is the #1 summer release that like I was like I can't, like this is just such a good eyeshadow palette, and the color story is absolutely stunning. So if you could only use one palette for the summer, what would it be and why? Only one palette. Now we're not talking neutral palette, it's just like any palette. If you wanted to, you could only use one eyeshadow palette for the entire summer. And I actually, like what came to mind was Blend Bunny's Sugar and Grunge palette, which they actually don't sell this anymore, but they do have they have various eyeshadow palettes that are very similar to this one. But I chose this Sugar and Grunge palette because this has a range of pastel shades. It has a range of like mid-tone, and then it also has some really, really deep tone shades in here. And then it also has a row of foils in here, and it's also color coded. So like if you want a pink eyeshadow look, just go down the line. If you want a green eyeshadow look, go down the line. It also has some like nice like neutral shades in here as well. And this eyeshadow palette, literally you can do so many combinations with this because of the way that it's laid out, because of the colors that it offers. If you want to do just a purple look, just choose purple. If you want to do a pink and purple look, you can do a pink and purple look. If you want to do like a green look, you can do a green look with it, or you can like mix your colors and make them look dynamic on the eyes and just add a lot of dimension. I also like that there's like the light, medium, and deep tones in here, and then you also have your foil in here. It just makes it so much easier that you're able to, maybe if you only want a pastel look, you have pastels. If you want to deepen up the outer corner, you know that you have all these deeper darkening shades, and you can make something super sultry, super grungy with it, and you have a variety of shades in these darkening shades here, and then obviously like the mid-tones as well. It's just a really nicely curated palette because it has colors in here. They're not intimidating. They're colors that like I tend to lean for when I'm going into more of color and I'm wanting to play with color. I really feel like green is a really easy like transition from like if you're very comfortable with neutral. Orange is also a really easy transition, and as you can see, that row also has like browns in it, and then pink is really easy, and purple is really easy to transition as well. So this is such a beautiful curated eyeshadow palette. I'm hoping that Blend Bunny actually brings it back, maybe with like a different name but the same color story, but it is a little bit bulky for me. But Sugar and Grunge overall, like this is the #1 palette. Like if I could only use one eyeshadow palette all summer, it would be this one because of the pastels, the medium shades, and then also the darker shades. And it also has a whole row of foils that I just absolutely love. They're so good. They're so pigmented. The Blend Bunny formula is so easy to work with. It is so easy to use on your eyes. The pastels, you can create just something super subtle like a wash of color. It's such a fun curated eyeshadow palette. Like that's it. That's the summer eyeshadow palette that I would pick. If I could only use one eyeshadow palette for the entire summer that isn't all neutrals, that would be it. And then last question, if you could design your own palette, what would it look like and why? And that would be for summer. So this is like either pulling shades out of different eyeshadow palettes, or like if you have single shades and you wanted to curate something. So the curated summer eyeshadow palette could be like if you pulled eyeshadows out of like a curated eyeshadow palette and you kind of like pieced it together yourself like mentally in your brain, or it could be like single shadows that you pull from your collection and you curate your own summer eyeshadow palette. And I do actually have some shades that are like my ideal like summer eyeshadow palette. I did curate 6 shades in this single, like in this teeny tiny little eyeshadow palette, and I've actually been digging into these quite a bit because this is my summer curated eyeshadow palette. I actually put it in my summer makeup must-haves video, but I chose these specific shades because of the way that I am doing my makeup for summer specifically. And so we have 3 different multi-chrome shades in here. We have Meteorite, which is from Terra Moons Cosmetics. We have Clairvoyant from Electrum Cosmetics, and then we have a shadow called Sprinkle Whips from Davina Cosmetics. And this one is like that true wet formula, very glittery all over the lid. This one actually has like a peachy purple, yellow, blue shift in it, and it is actually so pretty because it goes along with like the peach theme for summer of 2024. And then Sprinkle Whips is like this like lilac shade, but it also tends to lean a little bit pink. And then I paired it with a cool toned matte shade, something that leans a little bit more warm tone but is a little bit deeper than the cool tone, and then also a black, because the black you can use as an eyeliner, you can use it to smoke out your lashes, you can use it to smoke out your eye, and this would be like my custom summer palette. Yes, I know it's like mostly duochromes with a couple of like neutral shades in there. And then I would also add one more shade to it if I was able to. And there's a shade in the Sea Witch palette from Electrum Cosmetics that is like to die for, and it is my favorite multi-chrome shade. out of all the multi-chromes that I have, it would be Hera, which is this shade right here. This shade is, oh, it's just so stunning. It's like very wet looking, and it's very, very pigmented on the eye. It has like a blue to a gold shift in it. And so in certain lights, it looks gold, and in certain lights, it looks blue, and in certain lights, it looks green. And it literally is like metallic city on your lid, and it's so dimensional and so beautiful. This would be the other shade. If I could actually pull this shade out of my palette and put it into like a smaller curated palette, it would be this shade, because it is so pretty. It looks wet. It's so dimensional. Like, look how much it like opened my eyes and brightened my eyes. It is like my favorite multi-chrome shade from Electrum Cosmetics, and that would also be in this palette if I could fit it in there. This is my summer curation eyeshadow palette plus Hera plus Hera from the Sea Witch palette. That's what my custom built summer palette would be for summer of 2024. So guys, there's all my answers to the Sun-Kissed Summer eyeshadow palette tag. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing before you go. Let me know what your guys' thoughts are on some of the eyeshadow palettes that you would have picked for these questions. And again, if you want to participate in this eyeshadow palette tag, definitely tag me, definitely tag Kelly, and all the questions are going to be in the description box down below. And don't forget to go check out Kelly's channel as well. Thanks guys so much for watching, and I hope I get to see you in my next video. Bye!